Hi, and welcome to the very first edition of the Beyond the Whistle podcast, where we interview coaches and athletes that are making an impact in their communities and really leaders in growing their sports every single day. I am so excited to be talking to our very first guest, Meg Barber, the head coach of the NYU women's basketball team. Meg, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I didn't know I was the first guest, so this is exciting.
It's an honor. It's an honor. We are so excited. We're excited to be, covering NYU this year and really getting to see this legacy and this dynasty in action. But before we get into talking about your team, I really kind of want to know about you and your journey as an athlete and as a coach. So, as a native New Yorker, did you always know you wanted to end up at NYU, or kind of how did you find your way becoming a Violet?
Well, this is going to date me because I actually didn't even know that NYU existed. I am a New Yorker, but I'm an upstate New Yorker, which is very, very different. So I was kind of, aware more of like the New England schools and upstate New York and Western New York. And, the thought of New York City as a person who grew up in a town with one blinking stoplight was not really, something that was on my radar. And, the coaches, just like we do today, saw me at an AAU tournament, reached out. We're very, very persistent. And, back then we were so limited with the amount of information we could kind of find out on our own. So coming to campus and seeing it firsthand as a 17-year-old, it was just exhilarating and obviously life-changing. And, I'm here today as an alum, as a graduate of NYU. And really the reason I got into coaching had to do with the transformational experience that I had as a student athlete at NYU and the teammates I had and the opportunity for growth and support as a student athlete. And I just felt like I still had a passion for the game. I probably wasn't skilled enough to go play, in Europe or go play pro. So I just found my footing in the profession as a coach, and here I am today.
I am from a small town as well, so I completely understand the culture shock going off to
Yeah.
college in a bigger city. What was that like for you, and how was it kind of adapting to the whole new world that is, New York cityscape?
Yeah, I mean, we're a pretty non-traditional campus in a sense, very unique setup. Washington Square Park is really kind of our unofficial quad. And I think, something that still holds true today, it's just visiting schools to get a sense of like what feels right for you. And like I said, when I was walking across the park and could kind of visualize, okay, this would be my dorm, this would be class, this would be the gym, this is where my teammates are, and kind of grasp the everyday feeling of what it would be like to be a student athlete led me here. And then, once I was here, I think the people you're with make the experience. So from first and foremost teammates who are still some of my best friends today, the coaching staff who was really involved in our growth and supporting us in this process. And then, I think when you're in these high academic environments, these really competitive basketball environments, you're kind of just on, one track mind of time management. How can I figure this thing out, right? We all have bumps in the road as freshmen, even as sophomores. How can I balance an internship? How can I do kind of all the things I came here for, but still put my best foot forward for the program and for myself academically? And I was raised that way and obviously supported that way here as a student athlete.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your time as an athlete. How do you feel like you grew up within the program? And how did you manage the high expectations of going to a school like NYU and then also trying to be an elite athlete at the same time?
Well, I was recruited the year after they won the national championship. So if people know that, they can look up how old I am. But, so I knew I was coming into a program that had a really strong culture that was really important to me. Growing up in the high school that I did, basketball wasn't, the most competitive. I obviously learned a lot in high school, but I was really looking for something that would challenge me on a whole different level in college. And when I watched the game here as a senior in high school, I mean, the stands were packed and we played doubleheaders with our men's team. So there was like a camaraderie of student athlete. And I just felt like it had a really, really strong community. And that was what I was looking for most. And I think to your point, that's what probably led me to the most amount of growth when I was here was, people that are going to challenge you and challenge me and put me in a position to not always be successful, but sort of putting ourselves on a scale of if you're giving your best effort, that is success. And that goes the same with academics and even trying to find your pathways. There were things I did that were not the right thing for me academically. I think I came in pre-health and I graduated with economics, and that was just the way that I, figured out my own professional pathway when I was here. So I think it's, just keeping an open mind and, being academically curious, being making sure that you're passionate about the things that you're investing your time in, which was really important to me here. And the student athlete life in these institutions is not easy, and there's a lot of time. NYU, like I said, we're walking around everywhere, right? We're not just like hopping in a car and trotting across campus. So the life and the pace is a little bit more up tempo, and it was something I really had to get used to as a freshman. My freshman year, I don't think I took the subway a single time. I was kind of a homebody, and then I made myself a homebody even here. But it allowed me to invest in the right things as a freshman, which was just setting the foundation, for myself to be successful as I was then put in, sort of more of the leadership positions as I grew here.
I think those are such good takeaways. I think as athletes, we are such perfectionist mindset at all times. We want to win, we want to be great, but it's those stumbles and those challenges and those maybe wrong moves that will help you grow and find your way and find out, who you are a little bit more. So I think those are really good takeaways because we get so caught up in the perfection and the stat sheet and trying to be great all the time that we're scared to learn, I think. So I think that's a really good takeaway. Was there a point in your journey as an athlete there that you were like, I think I might want to come back. I think I want to coach. I think I want to end up back here and give back to this program?
Yeah, actually, my junior year, I had my advising meeting heading into my junior year with I was in the College of Arts and Science, and just we have such a plethora of options. And I think I was interested in a lot of things, and I couldn't really figure out what that next step might look like. And so just sitting down with my advisor on the academic side of things, and she was talking to me about like, okay, like close your eyes, what do you really see yourself doing in 3 and 5 and 10 years? And I said, I really see myself coaching basketball. And she knew nothing about it. So she was like, I don't really know how to help you, but I can tell you that economics, has a lot of, it relates to a lot of other things if coaching doesn't work out. So I kind of took a business pathway really as a backup plan. And, obviously as a coach, we use a lot of, different academic, silos of things that we've learned. But it was really just someone finally asking me like, okay, you have to declare a major, and I want you to really think about what that looks like in the next couple of years. Because prior to that, I think I would just identify as purely a student athlete that was competing for championships and going to class every day. And I wasn't really thinking about that day that the ball would stop bouncing for myself and I would have to, make a professional decision. So I really kind of tried out coaching to just see what would happen. And I feel so grateful that my parents supported me in that. And I was able to do that because I found so much joy in the profession.
I love that. What do you feel like is your favorite part about coaching? And what does it mean to you to be able to give back to a program that, was such a foundational part of who you are?
Well, right now those two things intertwine for me, because one of my favorite things is coaching here. And I said with last year's team, like I was an actual fan of the team as an alum, and then I'm also wearing this other hat as a coach, which is kind of a unique situation. But there's something really, really special. I'm sure other coaches that are, alums of their universities feel it as well. It's just a really unique experience to be able to give back to a place that, is kind of in our bones and kind of now like in our DNA. And then on the coaching side, it's just working with this age group and these players that are, looking for mentorship. They're also failing. They're also succeeding. There's so many different things that are happening on a day-to-day basis, and we get to support that process. And we get to kind of be that first line of defense when sometimes things don't go well. And I think a lot of people look at the success and wins and all of that as, oh, that must be so great. But I think actually a lot of the moments of hey, like this was really hard for me. Do you have a minute to talk? Those are the moments for me that are the most meaningful.
I love that. You've had coaching experience kind of at all levels now, from D1 with William
Yeah.
and Mary to Team USA with the U17 team. What do you feel like you've learned from coaching at the variety of different levels, and how have you implemented that at NYU?
The biggest takeaway, I think, is just to be myself. When you're a new coach, you kind of don't know who you actually are as a coach. And, you think about it, there's so many TV shows and movies. And I think for a long time, a lot of coaches played copycat, and you saw like a very similar, like everyone's yelling, and it's like all these same themes. And I just found a way, especially through my time at William and Mary. I was there for 7 years, and I really rose through the ranks, starting like low man on the totem pole as an assistant. I left there as the associate head coach and recruiting coordinator. So I think just finding my own voice and my own authentic leadership style, which is very different, by the way, than today. Being an assistant and being a head coach is very different. So, those opportunities, obviously being able to be the head coach here really helped to be the head coach for USA basketball. You're working with the top, 50 players in the country. We're whittling it down to 12 players that have to go on the national stage and take on the world, and really put ego aside and represent the three letters on the front of the jersey. And I think, playing for or coaching a program like NYU, where we really preach a similar philosophy here, that really helped to translate to coaching the U17 USA team to gold.
I love that. The world has changed a lot since I was an athlete, since you were an athlete, with
Yeah.
the landscape of the transfer portal and NIL, and
Mhm.
social media is now a thing that everyone gets caught up in. So how have you kind of adapt to that changing landscape? How have you kept the main thing, and really focused on, working with the world as it grows, but also prioritizing growing your student athletes and your young females?
Yeah, there's I think strengths to the current model, and I think personally for my value system, there's some weaknesses. But what has meant the most to me is just being at an institution that I believe in wholeheartedly, and can really pour my heart into, knowing that NYU is in my, their value system and my value system, whether it's academics, whether it's athletics, whether it's how our players are serving the community, really line up. And I think that's really the biggest key for, people looking to coach. It's, you can't really go someplace that the institution differs so much from maybe, what you are trying to get out of the profession yourself. So I've been on the D1 side, and I think that's really helped my perspective of what's so valuable here. And it doesn't mean, I mean, we've used the transfer portal, and I think there are, opportunities for that have made our program a lot better. But at the end of the day, one of the coolest things is that our programs here are still about 4-year players, and that's how you're going to sustain culture. That's how we're, developing leaders, graduating alums that really feel tied to our institution. So I think it's been a mixed bag, but we try to pull all the positives out of the current state that we can.
D3, D2 athletics, like the small school athletics, is something we are so passionate about, because you really are building student athletes in the truest sense
Mhm.
of the word. How exciting is it to watch your athletes graduate and have those degrees to go out and do like real world things? They're not just leaving with a trophy and a stat sheet, but they have a career and a future set up for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It's definitely one of the highlights. And even, 5 years down the road, that they're still reaching out, because even their career pathways might be changing, and still utilizing the tools that they were using as undergrads when they decided to change their major, and being fearless in that process. And headhunters reaching out, hey, I met with, one of your graduating student athletes, and they're just incredible. Is it real, or is that a facade? And I can, speak to, their authenticity as leaders, as really bright, strong women. So it's incredible. And we've had players. I think one of the cool things about NYU is we are not a one-stop shop for one particular thing, like just business or just pre-health. We have nursing, engineering, sport business. I mean, it's just a plethora. So the cool thing is that there's a real diversity in what our student athletes have gone out to do. So, but their level of knowledge and expertise in these areas is so far above what I can even understand. I usually just ask them to try to dumb it down for me when they're talking about, what it is they're doing, and what their next steps are.
Incredible. It's such a exciting thing, and I bet it's just so rewarding to watch your athletes like go on and do great things and hear such great things about the person they are, not just, who they were on the
For sure.
court.
For
But
sure.
we got to talk about the court. Talk to me a little bit about this team. You've gone 4 back-to-back UAA championships and
Hmm.
2 back-to-back consecutive winning seasons, national champions. Just describe what these past few years have been like, and as think back to, the freshmen that joined NYU, what does it mean to you to know that you have truly created a dynasty in Division III women's basketball?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's pretty surreal, honestly, and I think right now where we are, people are kind of just grouping together all of these years of success and like, oh, there's a streak and there's all these things, and I've found it really important, and also for our players to kind of make sure that each team recognizes that they are a one of one, and there will be no team that's exactly the same. Although we've happened to have a zero the last 2 years on the other side of our dash, which is just, it truly is surreal. Those two teams were vastly, vastly different. So every year is kind of different, which makes this job so fun and invigorating. And we're trying to put all the pieces together. The 4 championships, the 2 national championships back to back we just had, what's made them really special is I've been here now for 7 years. I'm entering my 8th season here. So these are our players. These are the players that, we talked to them and their parents and in the recruiting process when they were 17. And so to see their dreams and the things we kind of talked about when NYU didn't even have a facility. We didn't even have a gym when we were recruiting some of the key players that are now, a 2-time national champion. That has been just incredible to kind of see come to fruition. And, you use the word dynasty. I think the legacy here is the team culture is so strong, and that's the thing I'm really proudest of is now we have players that are committing and really want to come and be a part of this because they see something special and a little bit different than other places. And now we'll have players that hopefully are contributing to this legacy and also still leaving their own legacy as their own one of one team.
How do you manage the expectations that come with winning? You know, once the streak gets started, that's all anyone wants to talk about. And
Right,
but
right.
still you have to show up for every single game and play like you have not won a game. So how do you manage that expectation? How do you keep everyone level-headed, and how do you use it to maybe your advantage when you're tackling a tough spot in a season?
Yeah, I mean, when I took this job, I told our players just looking down the road at the Yankees, like I hope that in a couple of years we are the program nationally that has a target on our backs, and we're a program that people want to compete against and want to beat because it means something to even beat us. And in some ways, I think we've kind of arrived in that space, which is really a source of pride to just say, we got here, but you never get there alone. And so I think our mental performance coaches, our nutritionists, our strength and conditioning coaches, our athletic, directors and SWAs, like everybody has been so supportive of, my coaching journey here and kind of my vision here. And it just takes getting the right people in the door to be able to sustain that. So I don't talk a lot about expectations just because I think if you get the right people, they're wired to want to compete and they have a drive and determination to want just as much as the teams who had no national championships wanted. And so, our ship is kind of just moving in the right direction, and it's continuing to get the right people in. And then, certainly like a streak is going to end. And I think for me as a coach, I really have never looked at the streak as the main thing. We wanted to win championships here, and we've accomplished that. But again, we're resetting at the start of this year, and it's going to be another opportunity to go out and hopefully win another one.
You talked about getting the right people in the door, whether it's staff or an athlete. What are the qualities that you look for in someone joining this program to make sure that they're ready for what it means to be a Violet and to stay disciplined and to continue to go to school and compete and work at such a high level?
I mean, character first, right? And selflessness is, and we have fun in our program, so we like people to come in with just good energy. And most of our recruiting process, I make sure that I meet every recruit, and have ample time to spend with them to just make sure that our energies match. And I've told several recruits, like, we want to go down to the court and want to be in a circle of people that we really enjoy being around every day, because this job and coming to the court every day is not always easy. And so when you can get to that circle and love the people that are around you, I think that just puts you in a better place from day one. And, again, they are constantly evolving when they're here. So I think one of the cooler things is who they are as freshmen isn't always who they are even as seniors. But if their character is right and they're a selfless person, they're going to fit the type of people that we want in our circle every day.
Talk to me a little bit about this new 2025-2026 squad. Who's returning? Who are you excited about? Who's new? Give me all the details.
Yeah. So we have our first workout this Friday. So I actually have not really, fully seen them on the court. And one of the unique things about this year is last year, since I was coaching USA basketball, and that was most of that was in the July recruiting period. So I was so fortunate that my associate head coach Nadia Respondic and assistant Annie Barrett are, we share like left brain, right brain in our worlds. And they went out, and it was the first time in my coaching career that I wasn't out for the July recruiting period, and I really had to entrust them with, knowing our collective vision and recruiting the right people. So it's not that I'm not aware of who these players are, but I have way less base of knowledge of kind of what it's gonna be like on a day-to-day basis with this group. We do return Caroline Pepper, who is just a phenomenal player, leader, and she is our lone senior. So she'll have a pretty big responsibility in terms of, just managing things and kind of helping out from our mouth to their ears, if you will. And then, we have a lot of unknowns. I think we have a lot of talent that people really haven't been able to see because we've had these unicorn 4-year start every game, play every minute players who have finally graduated. And, we have a lot of talent that's just been patient, and they've been learning and growing and kind of waiting for their opportunity. So I think there's going to be a lot of new faces for NYU basketball, but it's an exciting time for us because it's a little bit of a reset and kind of this next push into the unknown, and also culturally, people that are following right in the same footsteps as those that have gone before them.
How exciting is it to be getting into this phase of the season where you're just starting workouts and you're just starting practices?
Yeah.
What is the best part about this portion of the season, and how are you hoping to build that connection and that bond with this team before the season really gets going?
I mean, this is like the best time of the year. These first few practices to just get out on the court before people are really talking about all the expectations and rankings and this and that. And you just get kind of more of an organic, old school feel of just being on the court and figuring each other out, I think is, investing our time and our minds and our eyes on these first few practices are some of the most important ones that we have all year. Especially as a coaching staff, to make sure that we get it right. And we want to put our student athletes in a position to be successful. And then obviously we're thinking about team first. So how can we be the best version of NYU women's basketball on the court when the ball goes up in November? And, right now it feels like a long ways away, but it comes so much quicker than people realize, our players will even realize. So our staff is prepared for that, but I want our players to just really enjoy getting out there, bouncing the ball together. And like you said, you can only learn that chemistry by playing together. So there's no magic wand of like, let's have great team culture and chemistry. So it's built from, some of the highs and some of the lows that go into preseason. And I'm really looking forward to that challenge.
I've heard you emphasize the word relentless a lot of times. How does that word apply to this team, and why is it so important that you instill that?
I think it matches kind of the grittiness of New York City. Like when we first started here, we were subwaying back and forth to a makeshift gym because we didn't have a gym, and we never practiced in the facility that we had games in. And so there were a lot of ways where I think our team could have derailed with how hard it was. And we just talked about relentlessly giving our best effort. And whether it was like, hey, the 6 train didn't show up, and okay, you have to pivot and now go find a different train and make sure you're running early. And all these just, they were carrying all of their gear on their backpack because we didn't have an equipment room. So, to be in this kind of more cushy space today at Paulson, where we've just had two phenomenal seasons to kick off the opening of our brand new facility has been incredible. But we want to maintain that mantra that we don't get too comfortable with kind of the more easy life now where, the locker room, the equipment room, and kind of the ease of what it might feel like comparatively to those first few groups. And then just carrying that into how we play defensively. We are a defensive minded team. So being relentless on the defensive side of the ball, we don't play the scoreboard. We just play each possession. And that's really important to me.
I think some people think that college athletics, they have it all. They've got all the money. So knowing that your athletes have had to, carry their gear and maybe not have a home gym in the past is just a testament to what you have built and the program that you have built and, the growth of women college athletics. So congratulations for all that you have
Thank
done. We are so excited to see this new squad in action, and I'm sure we will be checking in with you again in the season. Meg, thank you so much for taking the time out of the day to talk to me, and good luck this season.